Hello, my name is Moushumi Chakraborty, and for the Module 3 assignment in SPE 222, I have chosen to discuss the article by Smith et al. On explicit and systemic instruction technique to support working memory. What this article is about. Students with disabilities lack large capacity of working memory. Hence, they struggle to complete a complex task during learning and assessment. This article describes what is the explicit and systemic instruction and how that helps students that has working memory challenges. Why I choose this topic. A. As a subject, working memory in student is an interesting topic and I want to understand that. B. This article also illustrates the instructions technique how to handle working memory difficulties. Working memory is the capacity of an individual to process and retain multiple pieces of information. When an individual performs a task, they bring information stored in long-term memory and use that along with the recently stored short-term memory to construct the working memory. Individuals with less working memory capacity experience challenges with attention, engagement, and eventually it leads to academic failures. Teacher intervention becomes a necessity in those cases. The efficient and effective technique of successfully designing a task and crafting the delivery of the task is called explicit and systemic instruction. Key features include simple language, invoking prior knowledge, frequent scaffolding, immediate feedback, provide sufficient time, and use of visual aid. Article concludes saying that explicit and systemic memory is an evidence-based approach that has proven to effectively reduce the working memory overload for students with learning disabilities. Key practices. Clear and concise instruction. Adopt clear, short, and step-by-step instruction. An example of that is described in the article How the Teacher Helped Charlotte Summarizes a Paragraph. Use visual support tools. Use various visual tools effectively because those reduces working memory process demands. In in the article figure 4 is a great example how to use visual aid to teach subtraction problems. Scaffolding students. Help during guided practice for a new skill. Monitor student progress. Monitor and provide feedback immediately after mistakes to reduce confusion and build up the off for misconception. In my opinion, inclusivity is the key pillar for equitable education. Whether that is the cultural inclusivity or inclusivity for disabilities, educator must work always for equitable education. Using explicit and systemic instructions enables educators to include students with disabilities in the general classroom because they can use the same instruction set for all students. Collaboration between co-teachers becomes easier with explicit and systemic instruction. I have been a long time preschool teacher with limited experience to handle students with disabilities. This article and HLP practices have taught me how to refine myself to adopt different instructions techniques to include students with disabilities in the same classroom with other general students. I will follow the key practices described in this article in my future classroom. The tips of about how to effectively use visual aids and be concise to reduce working memory is something that I have learned new from this article and I will apply those in future. The concept of explicit instructions referred in this article is also discussed in our textbook. exceptional lives. The explicit instruction is discussed in detail in page 177. Our textbook also discusses page 173 how high leverage practice 14 emphasizes various cognitive and metacognitive strategies like explicit and systemic teaching. The story of Ryan in chapter 7, page 198 exemplifies the true benefit of how explicit and systemic instructions make him successful. Here are a list of references for this presentation. Thank you for listening my presentation.